Welcome to Lawline with your host, Alan Schnorman. Mr. Schnorman is a distinguished trial attorney, author, and lecturer. Each week, Lawline will bring you the most knowledgeable experts in the field of law today. And now we introduce our guest and our host, Alan Schnorman.
Welcome to Lawline. The aftershocks of the Wall Street crash can still be felt in the New York metropolitan real estate market. Today we'll look at what's happening in commercial, investment, and residential real estate and see if our experts can predict the future trends will be. Our guests are Philip Rudd, Vice President of the Association of Builders and Owners of Greater New York. And also Philip is an active investor in the real estate market. And Jerry Colston, a partner in the law firm of Goldberg, Wepper in Houston. Jerry specializes in commercial investment properties. Hello, Phil. Hello, Jerry.
Good evening, Alan.
Hi. Well, Phil, you're an investor. I just announced it. What's happening in the real estate market?
It's soft. Very soft market.
What does soft market mean?
It means that if you have commercial space, whether you have stores, you're not renting them as rapidly and as quickly, and you're taking less rent. If you've had commercial office space in an old building, you're wanting to keep all the tenants you've got. In a brand new building, you're taking a lot less money than you thought you'd get a few years ago to fill up your building. It means that if you're selling co-ops, and your co-op used to sell in 4 to 6 or 8 weeks, today it's selling in 20 or 30 or 40 weeks, and maybe longer than that. It's soft. People are not buying. That's what soft means.
Well, Jerry, you represent all the hot developers, all the hot builders. What are they doing?
Right now, Alan, the industry, I would go beyond using the word soft. I feel right now we're almost in a recession. My clients, who are active operators and developers, are using a very cautious approach to the industry. They have seen prices going through a high skyrocketing period, and now because of that inflationary trend and the prices of buildings being so high, they can't find deals to buy, and they're being very cautious before they go forward and look for a new deal.
Phil, well, if the market is soft, I assume 2 years ago, before the stock market crash, the market was more stable, to use a...
Well, stable or even on an increase.
What percentage are we talking about? Is it off 3%, 4%, 5%? Can you quantify it?
It's hard. It depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about commercial space in a commercial building, you're probably able to rent 10 to 20% less than you would have rented 2 or 3 years ago. If you're talking about a co-op apartment, you're probably able to buy it for 10 or 20% than you could 2 or 3 years ago. And it's been flat. Don't forget, since that market crash, the market actually flattened out. So there have been very few increases.
Phil, does that mean if I purchased my one-bedroom co-op for an astronomical amount, $300,000 2 years ago, I could sell it today for what?
I think you'd have trouble. I think one of the gluts of the market is one-bedroom co-ops, and I think that probably today, depending on where it is and all of that, if you paid $300,000 then, if you got $240,000 today, you'd be doing very well.
Jerry, what's your feeling about that?
Well, I would say, Alan, that in the transactional front of real estate and buying buildings, the marketplace is down, I would say, at least 50 to 75%. I would say that between speaking to various brokers that my office deals with, other lawyers who deal with the kind of work that I deal with, dealing with Albany and getting what we call Cuomo gains tax clearance and transactions of over $1 million, there is no activity there. And that's an indication to me that for the moment the marketplace is a very slow spot.
Jerry, by transactional real estate, what you're talking about is the numbers of transactions, aren't you? They're down 50 to 75%.
That's
not
correct.
That the market's down 50 or 75%.
No, I'm talking about the actual amount of transactions that are taking place. I'm talking about that in 1986, and you've used the stock market as a gear and the crash, I would use a lot better definition in terms of the fact that we had a major change in the tax law that took place in the end of 1986 that had a major impact in the real estate field. But in 1986, I had clients who did 50 and 75 deals in that year who are now doing 5 deals in that year.
Phil, my mother always taught me to buy low, sell high. Is now the time to buy?
I think that you're getting near the bottom. My prediction is about you're 4 to 5 months away from an absolute bottom. But the real problem is some guys can't afford to sell. You've got the transfer gains tax, you've got normal taxes that people pay. They've got investing partners who were expecting a higher profit because they expected an increase to continue. So suddenly that guy who was expecting to sell that building for $23 million in 1987 and was asking $23 million, he's now said, well, I'll take $20 million. Well, last week he came down to $16 million. This is an actual case. And still, and he may have trouble at $16 million selling it, satisfying the bank paper, and giving it proper to his partners.
Phil, but let's talk to that newlywed couple there who's looking to buy either their first house or their first condominium or first co-op. Is now the time for them to buy it, or should they wait? What should they do?
They should be looking right now, and if they see something that's very attractive, I would buy right now. I think interest rates are going to continue to come down, and probably the optimum time, I guess, is 4 to 8 months. But if you see what you like today, grab it because it may not be there tomorrow.
Jerry, what about that couple that has to sell their co-op, has to sell their condo in order to trade up? They want a bigger apartment. They want a bigger house. They're having more children and maybe want a little different area. What's your advice to them?
Well, I would say it really depends on the size and of the type of apartment or house they're looking for. In the smaller type of units in New York, the one-bedroom markets that Phil mentioned, you are finding a very, very soft market. If you're looking in the higher priced range, there is still a solid market there, and there's still transactions going on in terms of buying and selling of co-ops and condominiums. They're just a little harder to find. But this is the right time for a buyer to buy. The problem is most of those people, in order to go through the buy, they have to sell, and they get caught in the classic problem of having enough cash available from their sale to buy, especially if the sale is very difficult to make.
Well, what happens then? Do you own 2 houses?
Well, what normally happens, and this is advice that's very hard to guide a client with because they're always so anxious to go through the purchase to acquire that next goal and the next step, is we give them advice that they should arrange either personally or through their lending institutions or through private lenders some kind of what we call bridge financing. So they can be in a position that if they have problems selling their apartment or their home for the price that they're looking for, at least they'll be able to close and not lose their contract deposit in default.
Of course, then you're paying 2 mortgages, 2 interest rates, and 2 sets of taxes, and all the maintenance. Isn't that correct?
That's the absolute difficult problem in today's market.
Have you found that to be true now?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm not that involved in co-op sales, but from what I see in the clients that I have who have offshoots and their children are buying houses, that's a definite problem that you see happening.
Okay, Phil, let's assume that that person wants to make money, wants to invest now, and let's assume they want to do it as an investment. They don't want to live in there. They're happy with their co-op, their condo, or their house, but they have some extra money in the bank. Let's assume it's some between $50,000 to $100,000. They want to put it into real estate. Where should they put it?
I'd leave it in the bank. Right now, I don't think you should be a first-time investor going into a down market, and unless you really sort of know what you're doing, you could lose that nice nest egg. Right now, you can still get fairly decent interest rates. You can go out long-term on CDs for 9%. You can have a lot of trouble earning 9% on a property today.
Phil, we just went from a soft market to a down market. We're going to cover that right after this break. You're watching Lawline. Stay with us.
There's a reason people whisper when they tell you a rumor. It's because 9 times out of 10, it's not true. Take all the rumors about AIDS. People are saying you can catch AIDS from a mosquito bite or in swimming pools. The fact is there isn't a single case of AIDS on record caused by casual contact. It's up to you. You can believe the rumors or you can get the facts.
Rumors are spreading faster than AIDS. Call your local Red Cross for the facts.
Lawyers, like medical specialists, limit their practice to certain areas of the law. At our firm, Zalman & Schnorman, we specialize in personal injury litigation. We concentrate on helping injury victims receive fair compensation, and there is no charge for our legal services unless we are successful. If you are too injured to come to our office, we will come to see you. At Zalman & Schnorman, we care about you.
And now a word from the American Lung Association. Your lungs are an incredible piece of machinery, but your lungs are also incredibly delicate. Diseases of the lung are among the most frequent causes of suffering, disability, and death in the United States. Lung cancer is now the #1 cancer killer in America among both men and women. Chronic bronchitis and emphysema are marked by chronic obstruction to the airflow. Among chronic diseases, asthma is the leading cause of school absenteeism. Yes, TB is still with us. In the past year, over 22,000 Americans have contracted TB. Lung trouble can come from the air you breathe at work, but thanks to the American Lung Association, you can breathe a little easier. They're working to fight all this lung disease. Your lungs are a miracle. Take care of your lungs. They're only human. And if my lungs weren't in great shape, I couldn't have said all this. The American Lung Association. The Christmas seal people.
Hello, you're watching Lawline. I'm Alan Schnorman. Today we're talking about real estate. Is it an up market, a down market? And we have Philip Rudd, our active real estate investor, and Jerry Colston, a real estate attorney. Jerry, are there deals being made outside of the New York area if the New York area is soft?
Yes, Alan. Many of my clients have now decided, because of the difficult times in the New York market, to explore other marketplaces. And I now am actively involved in doing shopping center deals in Wisconsin, in Detroit, office buildings in Buffalo, a major shopping center in Miami. Even some of our clients have started to venture out of the United States and looking at other properties in Europe. These are people who are interested in continuing and buying in real estate and are looking at other marketplaces.
Phil, back to that investor with $50,000 to $100,000, would you recommend they go outside of our area?
Absolutely not. If he's going to invest anywhere, he should invest in his neighborhood. If he's going to buy an apartment, he should buy it in the building he's in right now. He should buy what he knows. The smartest advice anybody can ever give anybody about investing is know what you're buying. Know what the thing is. Buy a building right in your own neighborhood, buy a garage, buy a candy store, whatever you want to buy. But buy it where you know where it is and where you have an idea of what's happening to it.
Phil, I just heard the Seattle-Washington market has doubled in the last year.
Well, it's not doubled, but one of my latest purchases was in Portland, Oregon, and the 3 deals I've made most recently have been in Florida. I'm not able to buy in the New York market right now because I don't think the buys are there.
I've heard people are going down to the Art Deco section of Miami Beach. Have you heard about that?
The Art Deco section is done already. Been long done. You've heard about it very late. The Art Deco section's been done. And as a matter of fact, that lovely old Jewish population that lived in Miami Beach in the Art Deco section is going too. They used to be 80% of the population, now they're getting to be 30 to 20% of the population. The old people are dying off and they're moving out and they're gone. But there are places that are developing. Naples, Florida has had one of the greatest growths of any city in the United States. I think they had 80%, 60 or 80% growth in the past few years. You want to go build houses or buy houses that are on spec? That's the place to buy them. Don't buy them here in New York because the values are not rising here.
The next area is going to be Naples, Florida?
Naples, Florida is right now. I don't know the next area.
Well, give us a hint.
And if I did know it, I'm not going to share it with you.
Oh, we're just friends here.
Well, listen, if I tell you right now where I'm buying my next property, then all your friends out there are going to go down there and buy it, and suddenly it'll cost me much, much more.
Jerry, what's the next area in the greater New York area that you think will be hot?
Well, I still think that New York property is going to be a commodity that's going to sell. I think, as Phil explained, we went through a period in the 85, 86, and 87 era where people bought at very, very high prices. That was followed by people highly leveraging or lending, borrowing on their buildings and putting extensive mortgages on them. Because of the fact that people are now in trouble and a lot of people are looking to sell, the problem of why the marketplace hasn't generated yet is that no one wants to reduce their prices. I think eventually, and you look to the future of what is going to happen in New York real estate, is that prices will come down. It's just a matter of a question of time. So to me, New York City is still a place to invest. I don't tell all of my clients to leave it. Some of them are still very actively involved.
Are there any future areas right here in New York that are going to be hot in 3 or 4 years that the developers are active in now?
There is not an area in New York City that clients of ours have not been into already.
I've heard the Bronx.
The Bronx, again, has been hot, cold, and back hot again. It's gone through that typical cycle. I have one client, it's a very good story to tell, that I left with a closing from him in the Bronx, and he pointed out to me buildings that he's bought and sold 4 times in his career. It's in the Bronx. It's typical that these are buildings that have gone through typical cyclical cycles that we go through in our real estate industry, and right now we're in one of those down cycles.
Jerry, what about places in Brooklyn like Bensonhurst and Bay Ridge?
Well, those places are mostly involved with single-family investments or little strip commercial centers. I don't see a lot of activity in my office. That doesn't mean there isn't that going on, but I really am not familiar with that marketplace.
If you really want to talk about what's going to happen here, right now you can buy downtown Manhattan cheap because there's a lot of empty space down there and people are holding on and not too well. And that seems to be the first place where some of the price breaks are occurring. But if I were going to buy a small house in New York, especially if I were going to be willing to live in it, I'd probably buy something in Long Island City today. Because eventually Long Island City is going to have a lot of office building, not just the new Citicorp Bank. building.
Oh, I just read the
And-
City Corp is trying to build another building there.
Well, and eventually it's going to be, there's limited amount of space in New York City, and we are running out of space for high-rises here. And the next logical place is Long Island City. It's quick, it's easy, it's right across the bridge. And as you build more and more high-rises there, probably build something else, like another tunnel or another bridge going there. If you want to buy something and hold it for long-term and live in it and use it, or rent it out, try Long Island City.
Remember, you heard it here on Lawline.
I think that's a very important thing, what Phil is saying in terms of holding on to property. I think what happened, again, in the middle 80s is that people were buying property, and everybody heard real estate was the phenomenal investment to get into, and they were looking to get into it and get out of it and make that big killing. And what ended up happening was that's what drove our prices up to the level that no one could afford to buy anymore. Today, the investor who's looking to buy is looking at a different level. He's lost his tax benefits because of changes in the law. He now wants to hold on to his property. He's looking for a bottom line. And advice to my clients are to look for properties that have income and bottom lines to them.
Phil, a couple of years ago, you could not open the paper without seeing buy an occupied unit. What's the story on those?
Lots of trouble. The occupied units are more and more of a problem than ever. What's happening is if you bought one that breaks even, you may be doing all right. If you ever think you're going to get possession of it, you may have trouble. They've been trying to change, the DHCR, Department of Housing Preservation, has been trying to change that law, right, and make it more readily available to a pass and succession to pass it on to people who are no longer immediate family members. If they do that, then it's going to be harder than ever to take and get possession of that occupied apartment that you bought. And in order for you to really make some money on it, you've got to make sure it's vacant so you can resell it.
Well, is there a ready market in occupied units? If a person out there bought an occupied unit 2 years ago, can he just sell it easily, or?
Not easily, not today. It's like everything else in our market is down substantially. There is very little traffic. There are 2 or 3 brokers out there who are specializing it in that exact kind of a sale, and they might benefit.
Phil, what's your advice to a seller who has to sell that one-family house, that co-op or the condo now? Should they wait? Should they do other things? Should they market it to every broker in town?
If you didn't have to sell right now, I wouldn't sell. I would really hold on to what you're having. If you have to sell, then market it in the broadest sense you possibly can. Let as many brokers know about it. A multiple listing is available to all, and it's the best way to... The more brokers that know about it, the greater the market you're going to reach, and it stands to reason that the more people know about the product you want to sell, a house or whatever, the better chance you can have of selling it.
Jerry, Phil says the bottom of the market's going to be in 4 or 5 months, but I've always found that you don't know about the bottom of the market until a year afterwards when you look back. What's been your experience?
Well, I think that that's very true. I mean, I think if we could all sit here and be forecasters of what the real marketplace would be, we probably wouldn't be here, and we'd be on those retired islands of ours that we all dream about. I do agree with Phil that we're going to have a change in the marketplace. I think interest rates are going to help that. But there are still some factors in New York that hold back the market, and I think it's going to take time, and unfortunately, I feel it's going to probably take even more than 4 to 6 months.
Jerry, do you see anybody changing drastically? Right now, some of the people can't afford to sell their buildings. You know, I make deals, or I go to make deals, and I find the guy said, listen, I'd love to sell it at that price, but I'm just not going to make any money at that price. Do you see any change happening there at all?
Yeah, there are a new trend in our marketplace because of the devastating tax consequences of sales in New York. And that's related, and I have to comment on this, one of the things that are hurting our industry is the city and the state and the various changes in the tax laws that they have imposed by increasing transfer taxes, establishing Cuomo taxes, potentially increasing those. People are going to the form of what we call net lease transactions, which help avoid some of these tax consequences.
Instead of selling the building, they lease the building for 39 years or something of that nature.
Well, the provision is if they lease it for under 49 years, they avoid having to go through the Cuomo tax consequence of the transaction. And these are people who have bought property probably at a very low point in the marketplace, have depreciated it down, now is worth more, and to go sell it, they would take all of their profit out of it.
We're going to have to take a break now. You're watching Lawline. Stay with us.
My father taught me to steal and to pitch. Today I struck out 7 and stole home. I think Dad would have been proud. coach was. He said he wished Dad had taken as good care of himself as he did of me and Billy. Billy won't talk about it, and Mom can't stop crying. I don't know what it's like to have a heart attack, except I can see it hurts. It hurts bad.
You can help prevent heart disease. We can tell you how.
Lawyers, like medical specialists, limit their practice to certain areas of the law. At our firm, Zalman & Schnorman, we specialize in personal injury litigation. We concentrate on helping injury victims receive fair compensation, and there is no charge for our legal services unless we are successful. If you are too injured to come to our office, we will come to see you. At Zalman & Schnorman, we care about you.
Talking computers, high-speed braille printers, new technology helping blind and visually impaired people participate fully in today's computer age.
We're moving the top of page.
For more information about putting high technology to work for blind people, write American Foundation for the Blind, National Technology Center, Box 111, New York, New York 10011. The American Foundation for the Blind.
Hello, you're watching Lawline. I'm Alan Schnorman. With us today are Philip Rudd and Jerry Colston. We're discussing real estate and should you buy, should you sell? Stay tuned. Phil, you were just discussing taxes. Well, how do you see taxes in real estate?
Absolutely crazy. Somehow the city of New York has managed to find that increase the assessment on buildings in New York City by $600 million last year.
Sounds like a lot.
Now wait, here we are with a flat market. Here we are with a vacancy rate that's probably grown from 10 or 13% to as much as 20%.
Commercial.
Depending on who you're talking to, right? And in a flat market, rents have not gone up. And as a matter of fact, they've gone down a bit. And suddenly the city says, oh, well, they got $600 million worth more of assessment coming out of there. They did the same thing in 72 and 73. And you know what happened in 75 and 76. And if the city keeps taking that kind of a big, healthy bite out of real estate, hit them at the tax levels, hit them at the taxes Jerry was just talking about, you're going to find ourselves back in a real crisis tax-wise.
Alan, I'd like to even amplify. It's not just the real estate entrepreneur that gets hurt. Phil is addressing increases in assessments. The city passed what was called Local Law 63, which required owners of buildings to file income and expense statements. Most of the tenants in old loft buildings that were renovated went through a process of getting their rents increased, but had old leases with old escalation clauses, which is a provision whereby they pay a portion of the taxes. The city comes around and looks at this income and expense statement, not taking into consideration that an owner spent millions of dollars in renovating the building, and all of a sudden increases his real estate taxes. That's passed on partially to his tenants. I've had clients who've had to go to their tenants and knock out their tax clauses or readjust them, or these tenants would go out of business. That's driving tenants out of New York City, the very thing that we're trying not to do in New York. So it's not just the real estate investor, it's the employers and the employees who are suffering from this.
Phil, let me ask you, you mentioned the 70s. I remember in the 70s where large apartments, 10, 11, 12-room apartments on Park Avenue were going for basically zero if you could take over the maintenance. Is that possibly to happen again today?
I don't think so. I think star apartments, those apartments that are really terrific, are holding their value. They haven't really lost. They're still, as a matter of fact, increasing in value. You take an apartment that has an extraordinary view or extraordinary terrace, or has some feature about it that's very, very special, it's going to not only retain its value, it's increasing its value right now while the rest of the market's going down. There's always a market for special apartments. I don't see a really top building ever sinking to the levels of the 74, 75, unless people get that disenchanted with the New York City living style again, as they did in the mid-70s, felt it was just a terrible place to live.
Jerry, Phil brings up disenchantment with New York. I mean, we have the drug capital, we have AIDS capital of the world, tax capital of the world. How do you see your clients seeing New York?
Well, I still think we have to remember that New York real estate is still a very good long-term investment down the road. There are only a certain amount of bricks, only a certain amount of blocks in New York. If people can hold on, we're going to see a trend back upwards as we have seen in the past, but we must wait and hold on through this tough time.
Jerry, we've discussed... Yes,
Alan,
Phil?
wait a minute. The Japanese have a point of view that he just expressed. They don't necessarily buy for this generation. They buy way down the road, and Jerry says New York's going to be a good thing to hold on for a long time. And it probably is. If you want to be an investor and buy some real estate and not expect an immediate return and be ready for some rough weather, New York's still the best place of all.
Jerry, we've discussed a soft market. We've gone to a down market. Is there a possibility that a panic will set in and real estate will be just thrown on the market, that whatever it'll take?
I think that we're almost at a stage of a panic, but I don't think a panic is going to set into that point, Alan. I think that there are enough strong holders of New York real estate, enough foreign investment, and enough people in the long run who are waiting for the marketplace to go down, so they're going to start to buy again.
Phil, what about that word panic?
Absolutely not. I don't agree with Jerry. I don't think we're near panic at all. I think a lot of people would like to sell some property. They find they can't afford to, or they find they can't get the prices for it they want, so they're not selling it. They're holding on. I don't see any great big auctions and huge success at auctions. I see auctions where stuff's put up and no one bids on it because the minimum bid is too high. I don't see a panic in the streets in the slightest way.
Phil, what has to happen for the market to turn around?
I think what has to happen in New York City is we have to just get a little more stabilized in our financial markets where they've been losing jobs quite steadily. We have to turn that around a little bit. We have to wait until they turn that around a little bit. We have to wait till they increase their wants and needs for office space.
Jerry, what about foreigners coming in? The Japanese just bought Rockefeller Center, and every day you read about foreigners coming in here, whether it's English or Dutch. What's the situation on that?
Well, I think it's as Phil and I have just said. I mean, I think that they are much more intelligent than us. They have the wherewithal to hold buildings. They have the money to carry buildings at a loss. And they know ultimately that there's only going to be one Rockefeller Center. And that building is going to go up and appreciate in value. The rents are eventually going to go up from tenants in the spaces. And if you can hold on and you can deal with the fact that we're going through a poor time, and I didn't mean with Phil to say that we're in a state of panic, because that's not what I meant, but I'm saying that...
Down the road is what we're talking about.
I'm saying that there is a feeling in the industry among a lot of people that we must be very, very cautious. And to be cautious means to be very careful in the future.
Jerry Colston, Phil Rudd, thank you both for being on Law Line. This is Alan Schnorman, and as always, thank you for watching Law Line.
You have been watching Law Line with your host, New York trial attorney, author and lecturer, Alan Schnorman. Mr. Schnorman will be back with you next week at the same time. If you have any questions or comments about this week's program, please write to Law Line, 27th floor, 63 Wall Street, New York, New York, 10005.